Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. In today's presentation, we're going to discuss how CommonSpirit Health enabled remote care and collaboration, yes, during the global pandemic. My name is Elias Rubalcaba. I am the head of sales for Google Workspace here, Maven Wave and Atos company, and we've been a partner with Google for over a decade. I'm thrilled today to be sharing the stage with a very special guest, Jason Richardson. Would you like to intro yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Eli. Yep, my name is Jason Richardson, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Technology Infrastructure here at CommonSpirit Health. And I was involved from the very initial conversations that we had with Google and Maven Wave all the way through the deployment and still responsible for it today as we continue through the journey.
Thanks, Jason. So we're going to go over essentially what's shown on the screen right now. So Jason's going to give us appreciation for who CommonSpirit is. We're going to dig into what the challenge is, why Google was up to the task to meet that challenge. We're going to layer in how the change management strategy was very significant in making this successful. We're going to stop and just take a look at where CommonSpirit, Maven Wave, and Google are at today in the journey, and then we're going to highlight some keys to success. So if everyone's comfortable for that ride, we're going to dig right into it. Jason, maybe you can just kind of give us perspective on who CommonSpirit is.
Yeah, so CommonSpirit Health was formed back in 2019, and it was largely the alignment of two organizations, Dignity Health and Catholic Health Initiatives, back in 2019. And for CommonSpirit Health, we have 140 hospitals spread out across 21 states. And then we have over 1,000 care sites that we provide and over 140,000 employees across the country.
Jason, thanks for providing us the landscape of who CommonSpirit is. Could you dig into more what the challenge was?
Yeah, so I think when you think about the integration that we had went through with two very large companies, we had a lot of disparate systems. We had many different exchange farms across both of the legacy companies, and that experience that they had, we had multiple versions, 2013, 2016, some Office 365 instances. We had all of that very inconsistent landscape across the entire ministry, and it really made it difficult for things like just scheduling a meeting. People couldn't see each other's free busy. People couldn't find each other because there wasn't one common global address list or anything like that. So it was very challenging to do that and know that our environment was so disparate.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is well summed up, and maybe some could say it was exacerbated with the current state within the pandemic. And we know with healthcare specifically, innovation's been on the rise with emerging technologies that have been on pace to meet it along the way. But obviously, this adds another level of complexity. So could you just give us an idea of what the pulse of the organization was when you were making this decision?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we made the decision, it was right at the height of the initial piece of the pandemic. And what we were finding was while that was going on, there was lots of technology that was actually getting pushed because of the pandemic. So we had done telemedicine for a long period of time, just like most other hospital systems across the country. But there was this added push that in some cases, that was the only way that you could get care was going to be through telemedicine and virtual visits that we had. So there's a lot of push for that. And then, mind you, there was plenty of times where I was asked the question, do we really want to change collaboration platforms during the pandemic? But for me, the answer was we needed to, we had to. We had all these disparate systems. It was very difficult to communicate and collaborate across the enterprise, and we needed to make a change. So to me, there was no time like the present to make this happen.
No time like the present for sure. And I think you had decisions to make. You could have just went to your current in-house suite and just moving to the cloud. What made you choose Google?
Well, I think initially we were going to stay. We were going to just migrate to Office 365. That was kind of the expectation that had been set. And I asked, hey, did we look at any alternatives? And really the only other alternative that you had was Google Workspace. And as I looked at it and we started investigating what that would look like, there's a stat that stuck with me. And that's 1 in 4 American workers use Google Workspace on a daily basis. And once you kind of had that stat, you knew, hey, even though they might not use it in a work environment, they had some familiarity with the product, which eased some of the concerns that you had. And then also when you look at Google Workspace as a product, it's second to none when it comes to collaboration and what you're able to do. the file sharing that you're able to do, and then just everybody being able to communicate more efficiently with the tool set that's out there. But then lastly, what we saw was, we're moving from largely an on-prem to the cloud. And we knew that that was the toughest move that we had. And when we looked at it and analyzed it, we realized that we could actually make that transition the fastest by utilizing the Google Workspace product versus, Office 365.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about why Google, and especially considering that you had a lot of different disparate systems that had an on-prem footprint, there's a lot of muscle memory that needs to be broken up over the decades of just doing things a certain way, right? And that's one of the benefits this brings, is forcing users to go and to think differently. Human nature says if I'm doing something differently, generally I want to do it like as quickly as most efficient as possible. And really that's what Workspace provides the platform for. What makes it unique, though, with your environment is that there's a lot of users here, and there's a lot of users that are on different systems. So what we try to instill early and often is getting your buy-in to do a very thorough research phase of change management to understand those personas. And I think for you all, we had 28 different personas identified. And these are things from like your nurse practitioner to your person that's in corporate accounting, whatever it might be, right? And then through leaders such as yourself and working with your organizational change management team, making sure that we're identifying those user groups, that we're aligned in what we think their needs and their gaps are, and then we're just catering the training and incentives for them, right? Doing it exactly in a way that is beneficial most for them, and layering over the top of that communications and training early and often. I know there was a Google site, I think, that was created specifically for the org that kind of broadcasted this kind of as a central nervous system. Maybe you can give some insights into what that meant for the
Yeah,
journey.
so we did have the Google site that provided all the information. We called it our Get Going with Google site. And that was a site that was referenced for all of the customers. It was somewhere where they always had that hub to come back to. They might have known that they had something in an email or a meeting that they had taken, but they could always go to that site and know that they had the most important information. You mentioned the personas. It was very important because we knew, although we were rolling out a consistent and the same tool set for everybody, the usage patterns between our customers are vastly different. That practitioner or that clinician that's at a patient bedside is going to use the tools very differently than you or I would, as an example. So it was really important for us as we were doing this to understand those different personas, but then also make sure that we knew that people were going to be doing some relearning. They were going to have to forget the things that they had done previously. And when we went through that, our goals were that, yes, they were going to be doing things differently, but the hope was they were going to do it more efficiently in a more innovative way than they'd ever done it before.
Yeah, and I think we like to say like the hearts and minds of the user group, right? So you can have the best technology, but until you've convinced the users this is good for them, sometimes it's a harder pill to swallow until they really see that value and benefit. Um, you know, we've talked about how the decision was made and what your current state was and the circumstances that it was made in. When we show this timeline here, I want everyone to have an appreciation for, given the size of your organization, this is aggressive. And we've seen smaller organizations, we partner with them, and to bring to that go live date in 4 months, 6 months. But considering your size and just the state of the current world, this was aggressive. How was this timeline received internally?
I think everybody knew that it was an aggressive timeline. I think that, I know it was exactly 8 months to the day. The contract was signed on August 12th and the go live date was April 12th. So we knew that it was incredibly aggressive. I think the technical teams felt it was aggressive. The customer base thought it was aggressive. But then also we knew that and felt that the best thing that we could do was to do it as quickly as possible so that we had the time to bring everybody along the journey, but we minimized that time of having on the platform before that wasn't as cohesive as what we needed it to be. So to get the tools out there. But I think most importantly is to remember that, when the ministry went live on April 12th, that was really just the beginning. That was really just when everybody got the tools. And so really that's when the journey started for us. The implementation in 8 months, we had a lot of technical hurdles and pieces that we needed to work through, and we had to work through the change management piece. But ultimately, the journey just began on April 12th.
Yeah, and the journey continues. Very well said. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it in that time frame. We call that sometimes coexistence or that churn, right? The anticipation of moving, but I'm not cut over yet. So what does that mean to me, right? and commend just the greater team of accomplishing all that within that time frame. There is obviously some pretty significant stats that we like to throw up as far as what that meant, from the amount of trainings to the amount of mails moved to this to the volume of users that were really impacted and transformed along the way. What does that journey look like moving forward, Jason?
Well, yeah, there was a lot that we did as part of the go live itself, but like I said, that was just the beginning, and we continue to do user education and have the ability for individuals to continue to evolve and change the processes that they've had for such a long time and do them more effectively and efficiently than they had, and continue to meet with the customer base to see, hey, what's not going well and what are those opportunities we have to make things better.
Yeah, and I think 8 months on the nose, right? So that's something to be said about, even with things that were unprecedented but totally need to be addressed with, especially within the industry we're working with, within provider and healthcare, needed to be addressed. It's just big kudos to the team. We know that this timeline obviously represents the journey from where you are now, and just to give that kudos some perspective, well over 70,000 trainings taking place. You're talking about over 200,000 users. We get into the minutia about how many mail objects removed, right? 801 million. That's just massive. We know there was a lot of white glove support, a lot of time creating sites, a lot of time with that, VIP connections, and a lot of strategizing. So I think that's, honestly just something that everyone should hang their hat on and be very proud of. But I know that that's just one part of the next journey, right? So what does the future look like?
Yeah, so I do think it's important that all of the items that we did, leading up and at the time of the global go live on April 12th, there was a lot of things that needed to get done to make that happen. But to your point, April 12th to me was really just the start of the journey. That's just really when everybody had the tools across the ministry that we could really start to do things differently based upon what we had just rolled out. So now, a little bit over 4 months in, we're continuing to evolve and continuing to train and re-engineer processes to make them more efficient than they were yesterday, and using Google Workspace is helping us with that. And we also know that Google as a product continues to change and evolve itself, right? So we get to stay married to that journey to make sure that we continue to just keep operating more and more efficiently.
Yep. So, we've talked about a lot of this already, but just to kind of spell out keys to success, right? There is Google Workspace, the tools, and the tools are very important, as you mentioned. The collaborations, no competition to it. But from a user perspective, that means that there's change, and there's reworking the way we think, the way that we interact with each other. So the tools is the enabler. But then as you move a little bit to the center here, now what is the impetus that's making us move? What is the North Star that yourself and other leaders such as Suja and Lloyd Dean, CEO, we're engaging the users with, so that they knew this is a North Star we're following to truly be unified. And then selfishly, and hopefully you can keep us honest here, you had a consulting partner, a partner that's been in the Google ecosystem for over a decade, that really knows their stuff. Maybe in your own words, you can kind of sum up what your idea of success was.
Yeah, so when we talk about the tools with Google Workspace, they were important, right? One of the most valuable things that I found with the product was, I love the fact that, tomorrow when I wake up, every user is going to have the exact same set of tools, regardless of the device that they're logging into or the modality that they're even using to log in. They're going to have the same tools, regardless of whether they're more of an office-based worker or they're a clinician sitting at the bedside working with a patient. So that was incredibly important for us and continues to be so. It was paramount that we had our most senior leaders behind the change, and all of our executive leadership team was very supportive in the move that we had. Even our board was involved in the decision that we had. But I'd also say it was just as important to have the line level managers that were working through the system, that they were engaged and supportive of the change and knew why we were doing it. When we talk about the integration partner, we knew that was key, and it was explained to us that the integration partner was key. I'll never forget a conversation that I had with a customer that another healthcare customer that had just previously went through this, just a little bit smaller than us in size. And one of the gentlemen that I met with, he said, "Hey, when you go through this journey, there's going to be this change management process that Maven Wave is going to suggest. Whatever you do exactly what they tell you to do. And that's hard because you go through a lot of various projects and you think you might know better how it would work on, in your environment or with your customer base. But regardless of when that happened, that comment always resonated with me and was always in the back of my head and said, hey, why are we trying to do something different? Why don't we continue to follow a proven process that's been utilized and successful in the past? And that's what we did largely. And it helped us be successful at the end. So very appreciative of what happened.
Yeah, a three-way street between Wave and Atos company, Google. It's an absolute honor to have been partnered with you throughout the journey. We look forward to embarking on what's to come. We know that we're not done. Much more to be done. And thanks again for your time today.
Thank you.